Welcome to the Mom Owned and Operated Podcast, the podcast about moms and for moms, where we have candid conversations about running a business, raising a family, and remembering ourselves. I'm your host, Rita Suzanne, a single mom of four, digital strategist, and provider of no-nonsense business strategies and tactics. Hi, I'm Rita Suzanne, and today I have my guest Alyssa with me. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Can you tell everyone all about you, your business, and your family?
I would love to. So my name is Alyssa, as you said, and I live in Central Texas. I have 5 kids who are 18 all the way down to 3. So we're doing all the ages and stages all at once, which is a little mind-blowing sometimes when I'm potty training and driver's ed training at the same time. But it's fun and exciting, and life is always different. So I am a brand strategist, and I work primarily with startup business owners, a lot of women who are starting businesses out of their homes for extra money, or sometimes as a complete career change. And so my goal is really to help them get up and running with the right foundation. Or sometimes they come to me and they're struggling a little bit in their business and they're not quite sure why. And so we really dig into like how to course correct and get them the right visuals and the right messaging to be successful. So that is what I do. I love it. The best part is like watching other women succeed in business and watching their businesses really take off. And that's really personal for me because almost 2 decades ago now, I had my own business that was really failing quite miserably. And I spent a lot of money to hire some branding people to get me on the right track, and it worked. Kind of completely turned my business around. And that was like the catalyst for me to want to understand what branding and marketing can do for a business. Like I wanted to know how it works. Like I was really and I still am into the psychology of it. Like how do people think? How do they hear what I'm saying? How are they interpreting it? How do people interact with a website? All that sort of thing. And I've put a lot of that learning into the branding and the strategies that I teach my clients.
I love that. I feel like I always say that when people are struggling with their business, what they don't realize is that it's their brand. It's always their brand strategy. And I don't know if you run into this, but people think the first thing that they think when you say branding is logo, right? They think it's their logo.
Yeah.
But let's talk a little bit about brand strategy. What is a brand strategy?
Well, your branding is everything that you put out into the world, like everything that you say, everything you show people, it all falls under branding. It's far more than just a logo, right? And I run into this objection all the time. People are like, what like how I'm spending all this money and I just want a great logo. And I'm like, no. Your logo isn't going to fix anything. And so when clients come to me, we always start with that foundational stuff. Like, what is your mission statement? What's your vision? What's your value proposition? And they're like, wait, what? Like, I just want a logo. But it's everything. It's everything that you're putting out. And if you're sending conflicting messages out, right? Or if you are communicating in a way that doesn't make people feel emotionally connected to you, feel safe buying from you, all of those things will keep you from getting sales all day long, no matter how fabulous your logo is. So you got to go back to that foundational stuff. And then you build the logo, or you create the logo to communicate all that other stuff. And I think that's where, it's so easy to miss the mark because you're like, I have this beautiful logo. Why is nobody buying? Well, because you're not sending the right messages.
I find that the thing that people are mostly missing the mark on is their target audience and their messaging. Is that something that you find is the common problem, or are you running into different issues?
Yeah, I do see that. And the other thing I see a lot of times is that people will be following all this really popular advice, right? But it makes them sound like everybody else. So, for example, one of the very common messages to online business owners is, don't market your product, market the transformation or market the emotional result, right? But even that, I think, falls a little short because there's always going to be 10 other people or 100 other people or 1,000 other people selling the same transformation. And so what I like to tell business owners is everyone has competition. And at the end of the day, no matter how much you love your product or your service, the only thing that's really unique about your business is you, right? So I like to take people all the way back to like, what's different about you as a business owner or as a service provider? And how do we communicate that? Right. So for myself as a brand strategist, you can go and find another great brand strategist. Absolutely. You can find somebody else who's going to get you a good result. So what I try to focus on is what's different about working with me. And that is my biggest selling point. Right. And that's so different from what we're taught. But I think today's online market is so crowded. Like this online space, no matter what you're doing, is so competitive that the thing that I find works the best is to take clients back to that only unique thing you really have, which is yourself, and build on that personality.
Yeah, I think really people are just buying you. They're not necessarily buying what you're selling. They're buying you. If they like you, then they're going to purchase from you. And I found that to be true, especially when I was designing websites. And I would have an inquiry call with them, and they would like me. Where do I sign? Where do I sign right away?
Right.
And it really wasn't even, we wouldn't even really talk about the websites or anything else. It would just be really about us connecting, and that would be it. And I think that a lot of people don't put enough value into that and selling themselves and putting themselves out there, especially women.
Right. And people don't understand how to do that on something like social media, right? We all understand how to communicate the result that people get from working with us, but it's a totally different thing to try to communicate what it's like to work with you. And sometimes we need a little help in figuring out what that looks like,
So
and
share
so,
secrets. Like what are some suggestions?
well, one of the things I like to do with my clients is make them come up with 5 adjectives that describe them as a business owner. Like, are they creative? Are they funny? Are they detail oriented? Like, what is it about you? Like, we define it with some very specific words. And then as we're building out their brand, like we're writing a mission statement, we keep going back to those 5 words and we say, okay, are these 5 words, these core values that define who I am, is this reflected in my mission statement? Is this reflected in my value statement? Is this, and then as we're building colors and then eventually the logo and all of it, we keep going back to those 5 words because it results in this cohesive brand that has your personality all the way through it. And when we start putting that out there then on social media, that's what people see, right? And the focus then is totally different than on this is what I'm selling. And so it just changes. It just changes a lot in how you're putting yourself out there.
So when they are putting themselves out there, do you have tips for them as far as conveying not their product or any of those things, conveying themselves and selling themselves online? What do you suggest that they do for that?
One of the most effective things is to create content that talks about what it's like to work with you. Like, what is the experience like? For example, I call my free consultation a coffee chat, right? Because when working with me, feels like sitting down and having coffee with a friend. If you are someone who really wants that formal business-like experience, like I'm not your girl. But if you want to feel like you've just had a chat at Starbucks with your best friend and accomplished a lot, that's me. So I focus a lot on social media about that with that experience aspect, everybody knows that they can come to me and get a logo design, but I talk a lot about what it's going to be like, what you're going to feel like as we work through this process.
Yeah. Let's talk about, since we brought up logos a little bit, let's talk about your program, because we were talking about it a little bit before and I love it so much. I want to dive into that because I think that it would be maybe beneficial for somebody listening who maybe can't afford to hire you for a full brand strategy logo session.
Yeah. So I created the brand collaborative really from seeing a lot of social media posts where people were trying to kind of piece it together for themselves, or the posts in business groups where people are like, I did these 4 logos in Canva. Which one is better? Right.
I hate those because I'm like, that's not even your target audience. I'm
You know,
screaming.
and I'm like, well, all 4 are terrible, or,
Right.
but you're getting a lot of unqualified feedback. I have 57 votes for A, B, and C, so that wasn't very helpful. And I also talk to people sometimes in consultations where it's clear that branding will really help them, but they can't maybe afford my package, like you said.
Yeah.
So what I did in the collaborative is I built out a 32 video program. So it's 9 modules, 32 videos that walks people through every step of building a brand. And then I created a live coaching element of it so that they can walk through those modules. Then they can come throughout the month and talk to me about what they're doing and get that feedback. Because what happens is when you're trying to do it yourself, even when you're watching a video, you get stuck on something and then you stop, right? Or you get stuck because you don't know if it's good enough, or you don't know if you're really done or if there's more work to do, right? And so I wanted it to be this interactive experience where people could end up with a great brand that was really going to benefit their business and be confident in it. Like, no, okay, I've had some really solid professional feedback and I feel confident moving forward. And I like to say too that, there's no reason to be in the collaborative and get stuck, because you can hop on a coaching call and get unstuck. Sometimes it's as simple as, someone coming and being like, I have this mission statement, but I don't really feel great about it. And a couple little tweaks in 5 minutes on a Zoom call, and then they're off and running again. And so, yeah, I tried to make it the best of both worlds for business owners, where they can take control and do it themselves, but also get really solid feedback that they can feel confident in.
So you're holding their hand along the way, but you're not necessarily, doing the actual thing,
Right.
but you're taking them along with the journey so that they're getting the professional results, but you're not leaving it up to them to actually do the thing, which I love. I think is wonderful.
Yes. Yeah. When they get to the logo design in the program, I teach them how to go to Fiverr or to Upwork and know what to look for, right? Know how to pick out a designer that knows what they're doing. We go through, like, I actually record my screen and go through designer profiles and show them, like, this is what you're looking for. This is what you need to avoid. And then we talk about how to write a design brief so that you understand the terminology and you can clearly communicate what you're looking for. And a lot of the bad negative feedback that websites like Fiverr get, when it comes to logo design, I think a lot of times it's because there's such a communication gap between the client and the designer. There's a lot of very talented designers on Fiverr who are doing very reasonably priced logos. But if you can't communicate effectively what you want, right, or effectively direct them when they send you drafts and that need editing,
Mm-hmm.
it's sort of a lose-lose proposition.
Right. You're not going to get what you want if you can't explain what it is, that you want.
Right.
So
Exactly.
that's why it's important, because you're able to kind of translate for them. You're the mediator in between the process, saying, okay, say this.
Right. Yes. And then my favorite part of the whole program as a designer is when people come on these work review calls with their drafts that they've gotten back from the designer, and we can look at them and go, okay, this is why this works. This is why this doesn't work. We can figure out what they want, and then I can help them translate that to the designer and get the result they're looking for. I love that. I geek out about that totally, because it's so fun seeing other people's work and interpreting it for the students in the collaborative.
Yeah, that's interesting too, because oftentimes when I was doing design and more technical stuff, my clients used to love that I would not speak in technical jargon to them, because I would speak just, I would simplify it for them. And it sounds like that's what you're doing. Like, you're translating for them in regular speak, but you're still providing the technical jargon for them to use with the designer in order to get the best results.
There is a certain amount of technical speak that as designers we need, because that's what defines
you're going to say,
you
need this kerning over here, put some space in this, blah blah blah, exactly. But yeah, you need to tell them, say this in order so that they understand, the designer understands what you're looking for. Otherwise, It's just going to be, it's not going to, the result just might not, come back the way you want.
Yeah, it's like trying to order your food at a restaurant when you're in a different country. Like, if you don't have anybody to kind of translate, there's only so much you can do with sign language.
Yeah. And that's why I think it's so brilliant, because it's, it's the best of both worlds, right? They get somebody to do the thing for them. They're not having to go out and try to create a logo for themselves, which is what most design classes are. Most design classes are like, oh, you want to create a logo? Here, I'll show you how to create one on Canva, which is really simplistic, really basic. Hey, use the template that Canva has over here and modify it for your use. That's not necessary. That's definitely not going to get you where where you need to go, but it's good enough, right? It's good enough, but it's not necessarily a good representation of your actual brand. Right,
exactly. And if you use something like a Canva template, honestly, even if you modify it, it's still going to look like 100 other people's logos and a Canva template. Yes. I spend enough time in Canva, I can recognize one of those templates a mile off. In fact, I had a client recently. They just wanted the website. They were like, we already have all this other stuff. And I said, okay. So I said, send me your logos, right? They sent me 3 options that someone else had put together for them. And every single one of them, I was immediately like, those are Canva templates. And within 5 minutes, I had gone in Canva and found every single one of them. And I was just like, you can't use these, like, not like this. And they were like, why? And so then we had the whole conversation. I actually have a little coaching note, an extra video in my course about why we don't use templates. Because that's a question that people have, like, why? Well, why not? Right? It looks fine.
Yeah.
Because the whole point of branding is to stand out by definition.
And it's unique to you. And, and I think that a lot of times, though, when you have and you tell me, I'd love to hear your perspective on this. When a business first starts, they would come to me and they would want this big full brand package, right? But then in a year or 2 years, their brand has completely pivoted and changed. And so at this point, I don't think that investing in a brand package from the beginning is probably a good idea for anybody. I feel like you need to wait, maybe, get a starter or something, and then you invest later when you get everything kind of figured out. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's really true, especially if you are just starting out on your own. I mean, it's a little different, I think, if you have corporate investors and you're going for the big bang right away, but that's not where most of us start. And I think any entrepreneur can tell you that their business has pivoted many times.
Right.
And so one of the benefits of the collaborative and the program is that you have lifetime access to the videos. As long as the program's running, you've got access. And so if your business pivots in 6 months or a year, you can go back through the program and use those videos again to adjust what you're doing and make it fit with your new purpose or your new vision or whatever that looks like.
Yeah. I think the whole thing is wonderful. So, one thing I wanted to ask you is, what unique strategy has helped grow your business since you
Yeah.
started?
Oh, that's a great question. So I think really that personality thing has been key for me. And I discovered this really sort of through trial and error because I'm an introvert. I tend to be a fairly private person. And so it was a big hurdle for me to lead with myself and my personality. But I started seeing how it worked, how effective it was. And I also started noticing, and this was really interesting to me because I didn't think it was an unexpected benefit, I guess. But what I started realizing is that when I led with my personality on social media, my close rate on sales calls went way up, on
Mm,
consultations went way up. And what I discovered is that I think it's because there was no more incongruity between what people saw on Facebook and what they experienced when they got in that call with me, right? They felt like it was the same person. It was a seamless experience. And that builds confidence and trust with that other person. I mean, I can see it from a reverse perspective, right? If you were following someone on social media and you thought, oh, I want to work with them, and you get a call and it's a completely different experience, that would make you feel a little unsettled, right? You wouldn't be quite sure if that's who you wanted to work with. And so when I started to do that and lead with personality, like my close rate on sales calls was up over 90% because I was creating this seamless experience and building that connection and trust with people. And so I don't know how much of a secret that is, but that really has been like the biggest game changer for me in building my business.
well, I think it's a good strategy to use, because what I think, and this kind of goes in with what we were talking about earlier with women not really putting themselves out there, because while they put themselves out there, sometimes when they do, they're very safe about it. Right. And so then when a client or a prospect meets with them in person, they're not the same. Right. Maybe
Mhm.
that's when they actually see their personality, because the person that they are online is very safe. And
Right.
then they meet them in person, they're like, oh, okay, like she's actually not the same. Right.
Well, it's scary, right? Because if you lead with personality and then people attack you, it feels like a personal attack.
Right.
And so you have to you have to kind of develop a little bit of a thick skin. And
Yeah.
but I think that's true of business owners, being a business owner in general. If you're going to take things personally, um, and not have a thick skin about it, that's going to impact your whole business. Like most people that I see that are very successful in business have sort of found a way to get past that and not take it personally when they encounter criticism. And I have even moved very recently from, I used to do the block and delete thing, when I would get negative comments. And now I've moved into just replying, you know, like being confident enough in who I am and what I'm putting out there to just reply. Sometimes I'm a little sarcastic about it, but I call them out
Yeah.
on their behavior, which is also my personality, right? So I'm growing more and more into this leading with my personality and being confident in myself and my marketing, which in turn is a cycle, right? That attracts more people. I've gotten a client just recently who read one of my replies to a hater and picked me because of how I replied.
I love
But
that.
but it's not safe. It isn't that, and that's absolutely true. Like you have to be okay with the
Yeah.
fact that you're going to get negative feedback.
Right. And that develops over time. I think that a lot of times when we start our businesses, um we don't realize all the things that we have to be, right? All the hats that we have to wear. We assume we're just going to do our thing, right? Whether that's design websites, design brands, whatever. We don't really understand that now we have to be a content creator, we have to be a marketer, we have to be a salesperson, an accountant, we're bookkeeping, we're doing, like we're doing all of the things at one time. And at the same time, we have to make sure our mindset is intact, and we have to take care of ourselves, all of these things that it takes in order to be a successful entrepreneur and run a successful business. It's a lot of things. And I don't think that we realize that when we start our businesses. And when you start putting yourself out there, then that's, you become more confident. The more you do it, the more confident you become. But it's so scary. It's so scary.
Right. Yeah. And, I was also thinking while you're talking about that when I started my business, I was like, oh, I can charge X amount per hour. This is going to be great. And what I didn't realize is there are so many hours of work that I don't get paid for,
Yes.
as a business owner. I just had this conversation with my son. Actually, he's in his junior year in high school, and he found out that if he goes into irrigation, he can charge people about $100 an hour here. That's the going rate in our area. And he was like, Mom, I can make $100 an hour if I just pass the irrigation course, and I can start my own business, and I can da, da, da. And I said, hang on a second. Like, you need to understand you're probably going to work at least 50% of your hours unpaid.
Yeah.
Because you're doing the marketing and you're doing the accounting and you're driving to appointments, and I'm like, it could still be good money, but it doesn't quite look like what you thought it was going to look like.
Right. It's not nonstop 100 hours, you're not making $800 a day. So
no. Unfortunately, no, nobody's paying me to do my accounting or create my social media posts.
Right. And I think that's, it's just the reality, but it's just like with anything, the more you do it, the more comfortable you get, the more you put yourself out there, and the more confident you will be. And that's where the personality starts to shine. And I think that's where it takes that time, right? It like takes time for us to kind of get the courage to actually start doing the thing. And it's like everybody thinks that creating a business or running a successful business is so easy. It's so simple. I'm going to be sitting on the beach with my laptop so soon, and it's going to be so simple. And, I'm an overnight success, in no time. And it just takes so long. And there's so much work in it, not just the things that we already just mentioned, but everything else that goes into it. The mindset is like a big thing that can really slow you down and just really mess you up.
Totally. Yeah. Especially if you start focusing on, like, for me, when I was first starting out, I was like, I sat down one day and calculated, and I was like, I made like $3 an hour this week. And like, it's so easy to just get bogged down and discouraged at the beginning because you're looking at other people with their laptops on the beach, like you're talking about. And what we don't realize is that very often the people who are doing that have been at it for 10 or 15 or 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. Like we look at, they put out their highlight reels and glamorize all of the things. And then we're over here, in the woods, in the thick of it, comparing ourselves, thinking like, why am I a failure?
Right.
You're like, you're not. I feel like it.
You gotta keep going. It's so easy to quit. I think so often people quit right before the moment when things shift, right? Because I have noticed, I've been have had my own business, been an entrepreneur for 2 decades now in 3 different businesses. And every time, about the time I felt like quitting was right before things finally shifted and started working. And I think most of that is because of trial and error. Like you start to learn what's working and what's not, and you start to get confident and put your personality out there and all these things. It's sort of like that snowball effect, right? Where you're gaining momentum and you're gaining traction, even though it doesn't feel like it. And then suddenly it's like, oh, wait a minute, here come the clients. Where have you been for the last 3 years?
Right, exactly.
So don't give
Just
up.
when
Like
you were
that's
getting ready to stop, right? And then there it goes. Um, okay, so I love talking about self-care. Like I mentioned before, one of the things that, I started this for was because I wasn't really taking care of myself too much. So I love to hear about how other moms are able to make time for themselves, especially moms that have 5 kids in such varying ages. What are you doing, Alyssa, for you?
well, a couple of things that I have done. Actually, I've really had to focus on this more, especially in the last year, because I started to see myself getting really run down. And so I had to make some changes. One of the things I did, it sounds so simple, but I spent $60 a year on an app that
Mm,
does meal planning for me.
okay.
And it's called emails. Actually, it's not a promotion, hashtag not sponsored, right? But it
I
actually
love
like
emails.
plans all my meals for me, sends my shopping list to Walmart for me. And it sounds like such a simple thing, but like getting that mental off my plate, right? I can plan healthy meals and not think about it the rest of the week. That was huge. And I'm eating so much healthier because I'm planning ahead,
Right.
which is a big self-care thing for me. It's very easy when you're busy and you're like eating at the computer in the middle of work all the time to choose unhealthy options. The other thing that I did that was really big for me is I started like a no work after 9 p.m. rule,
Mm,
um, which is hard because sometimes the kids aren't even all settled and in bed until 9 o'clock. But unless I have a very strict client deadline where I've promised something by a certain date, I don't work after 9 p.m. And a big component of that too is learning how to like shut it off mentally. Like not it doesn't count if I close my bedroom door to read a book or watch TV and I'm still thinking about work. So there's been a big some mindset work there for me, like giving myself permission to shut the door on work and just relax for a while. But there's something really, really important about giving yourself that mental break, right? Like I'm not thinking about work. I'm doing something that's relaxing and fun for me. Even if it's just the last hour before bedtime, it makes a big difference.
well, especially when you're doing anything creative, I feel like it's a necessity, regardless. I used to tell my clients that you cannot create something creative wise if you are stressed or pressured. It's not going to happen. You're not going to be able to flow very well.
No, absolutely not. And if you're sitting at your desk struggling, the worst thing to do is sit there and struggle. Like go for a walk, drive to the beach, do something
Yeah.
that gets the
That would
energy
happen
flowing
to
again.
me. Yeah, that would happen to me every time whenever I would get stuck on like a line of code or something. I would go for a walk and I would come back. Yes, I've got it. That would
Right. So we got to like I have to remind myself I have a choice right now. I can sit here at the desk and tell myself I'm being productive, or I can walk away for 30 minutes and then come back and actually be productive.
right.
Right?
Right.
To-
So, and
Total
it's so much
mindset shift.
better too. Like we need to get a break and walk and get some exercise in anyways. Otherwise, I feel like you're like me, where it's almost like a workaholic status. But it's just that I get so invested in my clients, and I feel so just dedicated to them. So that's why I get like that, and I feel like that's how you are as well.
Yeah, and a little bit too, I had to start like realizing that my self-worth is not tied to how many hours I put in or how many clients I serve, right?
Yeah.
And that took a lot of work too on my part to like start separating that out and being like, like this is who I am and this is what I do and those are two separate things. Which is hard when you're marketing with personality, right? It kind of all
Yeah.
you have to really do a lot of intentional mindset work on all that.
Yeah, I used to get caught up in their success, like that being tied to my success, right? Like if they weren't successful, then it's my fault.
And I'm like, well, it's not my fault because they didn't do the work. Like,
Right.
but that
Yeah.
took a while because, it took a while because I felt like, well, why didn't they, they do it, but it's not my fault that they didn't,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, I guess.
Right. And I mean, who knows why they couldn't at that time and just probably weren't ready. But okay, let's tell everybody where you are online. Where can they find you? Where can they sign up for all the things?
Okay. So my website is yourbrandchemist.com. And then the website for the brand collaborative is yourbrandcollaborative.com. If you go to that website, yourbrandcollaborative.com, it's going to take you straight to a page where you can sign up to get a free training that I've put together that really talks about how I look at branding and how branding can change your business. It's almost an hour long. It's a really deep dive into like some of the myths and misconceptions around branding and how what the truth really is, right? Like how it really works. So they can go there to get that free training. And then from that training is where they can go if they want to join the collaborative. I like to send everybody through that training because I really want people to understand what they're getting in the collaborative before they sign up. So yeah, those are my two websites, and that even if people want to watch that training and not join the collaborative, there's still a lot of great stuff in there that I think will really help them get their business off to the right start or get it kind of balanced and going the right direction.
Yeah, because then they can get an understanding of branding and the importance of it in your business. And so, yeah, head over there. The links will be in all the things. And then where are you on social? Where do you spend your time?
I am on Instagram at Your Brand Chemist, and then I'm also on Facebook with the same name. So
love it.
I'll send you those links as well so people can find me there.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much for being a guest. It's been awesome.
Thanks for having me. It's been a real privilege.
And there you have it. I want to encourage you to remember that being a mom who runs her own business is not easy. We all struggle, but just keep moving forward and don't forget to make time for yourself. As moms, we are usually the first thing to go to the bottom of the list. If your business is overwhelming you and you need real solutions, not just some sugar-coated suggestions, apply to work with me at ritasuzanne.com/apply.